Hi, Seb. Nice
Hey,
to have you
Stefan.
on the show.
It's great to have
Um,
to be here. It's been a while.
yeah, it's been, well, actually, it's been some weeks
Exactly.
since we met in Redmond. Cool. So maybe for the folks listening who don't know you, just briefly introduce yourself. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? What you're doing, so that everyone knows who you are, what you do.
Awesome. Well, first, I'm Sébastien. I am from Montreal, Canada. I've been in the Microsoft space for around maybe 20 years now. That makes me very old. I think about that every day. Um,
Almost, almost as old as SharePoint, right?
yeah, well, actually, it was the 23rd birthday of SharePoint very recently. I was like, it was not that far from where I started. I've been a developer all my life, so I've been doing development, custom code as a dev for a very long time, and then I moved on to more on the product management side of things. Um, in consulting, I've done products, and now I am a principal PM on the Copilot Extensibility Team here at Microsoft.
Cool. So, Copilot extensibility. What's your main role? What are your tasks? What are your responsibilities within there? How can we, as non-Microsoft people, think of a typical workday of yours?
It usually looks it every day is very different. That being said, my main role is to um, drive the different teams. Copilot is a very big topic here at Microsoft. There are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of people working side by side to build that really great experience with generative AI and Copilot. And Copilot as a like Microsoft Copilot as a brand, but also all the different Copilots that we have, either the security Copilot, the Copilot for Microsoft 365, and all of the others. I don't know exactly how many of them there are, but I know that I've seen graphics on the web that there are hundreds
Yeah,
of
quite
different
a lot.
Copilots. Um, my role is really to drive these teams to align around goals, around strategy to ship something that will, in my case, that will enable developers to do more with Copilot. We want to make sure that all the skills that our developers developed on our ecosystem, think graph, think SharePoint framework, think teams, think bots, all of these different skills, they're all aligned with the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. Now, what we want to do is to bring these kind of skills, these developers inside the Copilot ecosystem to extend Copilot to make it even better than what it is when it's grounded in your Microsoft 365 data. So my goal is really to do that. So what it means, lots of papers to write, lots of strategy papers, lots of selling ideas internally onto how we can shift things to make sure this happens. Also, lots of meetings. But the reason why, like, it's always funny when I hear PM saying, "I'm in meetings all day." But in this case, it's really true, and I think it's a very um, efficient way of working when you're building these really on the edge type of capabilities because everything changes every day. Every day something changes. There's something new. There's something that we decided that we're not going to do. There's something that we pivoted. We decided, hey, in the end, that's not how we want to do it because we want to make it bigger. We want to make it bolder. So, okay, now we regroup. What do we do? How do we take that new input and we make it happen? So, lots of meetings, lots also of mentoring. As a principal PM, you're kind of like somebody that has been there for a long time and knows the product management game, a lot, the political things, how to sell an ideas, how to negotiate, how to um, make things happen. And with my fellows peers, trying to help also on getting them to grow in their career. And that's really part of what a principal PM does, is also to share their knowledge to bring more people at the same level as they are. So I would say meetings, lots of documents. I've never spent that much time in Word that I've been doing in the last couple of weeks. And strangely enough, um, this space is so exciting that building these docs is actually really, really, really fun. Writing a doc just for writing a doc is not fun. Writing a doc to uh, build something from the ground up that does not exist, and now making it something that is going to get shipped in a couple weeks, couple months, is really, really powerful. So I really like that.
I can imagine, yeah. So your development game these days is Word, right? So your ID is Word.
So here's the thing. Um, I'm still a very hands-on PM. So every day I at least spare 1 to 2 hours a day to code. And what I do is I code on the things we build to live the life of a dev that would use our tools.
Cool.
I think it's something that is super important for me. It builds empathy on our future devs. Right now, like, you know how it is. Like, we're in a state where we're building stuff, and it's really hard to gather. We have customers we work with already that are part of some of our preview programs and so on. But there are things that haven't been announced publicly, and there are things that we're still not sure if we're going to ever ship. But we need to try them. So I need to put back my hat of somebody that was working in the dev space that needs to achieve one task, which is to extend Copilot with their data. Okay, how can I do that? How can I, like, and now, like, how bad do I fail at this? How great we need to bring the experience to make sure nobody fails at this. So that 1 to 2 hours a day is super important for me. First, to keep me grounded in that space, but also to make sure that what we ship is not just theoretical. It's not just something like on paper that looked amazing, but then when you actually do it, nah, not
Yeah.
so much. So that's really so. Even though Word seems to be my IDE, which is, I wouldn't say it's my IDE of choice. I say it's my IDE. I challenge myself to always do 1 to 2 hours of coding a day to make sure that I stay grounded in that space.
Cool. So you mentioned the thing about extending Copilot. So what options does a developer actually have to extend Copilot? Because there are a lot of options out there, but what options from a higher perspective do we have?
So I think there are different options today to extend Copilot, and there are some low code slash no code solutions. There are um, ISV slash bring data inside Microsoft 365 solutions, and there is the real extend as a pro code developer. So first, low code, there's Copilot Studio that helps you extend what you can do with Copilot already today. Um, that is a great way to build copilots when you don't want to get your hands dirty into code. It does amazing things, and it integrates super nicely with Copilot for Microsoft 365. So that is definitely something that I encourage everybody to look into, because I really think that this is a great option for low-code devs. That's the same stack and tech that powers Power Apps, that powers Power Automate, that powers Power Virtual Agent. So definitely, it's something that has been proven, and it's really, really cool. And there are really cool things coming up also in that space. Now, if we look more into the hardcore devs that want to do some whatever language, but really extend the capabilities, today I really see kind of three options there. First option are what we call Microsoft Graph Connectors. Microsoft Graph Connectors is a way to bring your line of business data. Think about your invoice system. Your invoice system is probably, let's say, it's fully customized. It's a SQL database, a nice UI. You have your invoices. This system is fully disconnected from Microsoft 365, right? Maybe it uses auth, like enter ID, but that's it. How can you bring that data inside Microsoft 365? So for the last maybe 3 years, probably 3 years now, graph connectors have been a way to bring data inside Microsoft 365, and then it can participate in different experiences. In the search experiences of Microsoft 365, where you can search for an invoice and you would see your invoice, and you click on it, then you're redirected to your invoicing system. So it's basically an indexing solution that we have. You have it in context IQ, which is when you @mention or you slash something in Outlook, for example, you can actually select an invoice from there. You can have it as part of the search experience, and you're gonna have it sprinkled around in different in the box experiences in Microsoft 365. What we allow now with Copilot is to also reason over that data that lives now in Microsoft 365. So if you go in Copilot and you say, "Hey Copilot, get me my top 10 customers that have spent more than 100,000 euros in the last 6 months," and summarize it as a beautiful table, including the name of the customer, the total spent, and the last purchase date. Well, Copilot will be able to harvest the data from the connectors, will do all the connections, and will return the data back to you. So that's really, really powerful. From a Copilot standpoint, not a lot that you do there, because it's basically built in. But you need to ingest that data, and that is a pro code thing. It's an API. You ingest the data. You decide the fields you want. You select the ACLs, the security you want to put on that item, and off we go. Second option we have is to build a messaging extension, a search messaging extension that allows you to, in Teams, to search for content, and then it basically returns the data. That messaging extension is super powerful. It is a mechanism that already exists in Microsoft 365. So you can already build messaging extensions that are in Teams and Outlook, in Office.com. There's a couple of places where they show up. And now you can see it as a on-demand, I'm going to say an AI word here, an on-demand RAG mechanism to bring more data in. So with Graph Connectors, the data is all in at Microsoft 365 in its custom database or custom index. Now, when I do exactly the same thing, let's ignore the Graph Connectors. You don't have invoices in Microsoft 365 anymore. And you ask exactly the same question. Give me the top 10 customers that spent more than 100K euros in the last 6 months. Just give me a second, Stephan, okay?
Sure.
Sorry for that. I'm gonna have to cut.
No worries.
Sorry for that. So the same thing happens. I'm just gonna go back here. So now you ask the question. You have top 10 customers. You want to sort them by span or whatever. What's gonna happen is at the demand, when somebody will ask for it, we're gonna call your API. We're gonna call your messaging extension, that then gonna call your API or call your database or whatsoever. Do the fetch at that time, and will basically only bring the data that it needs to complete the query. So Copilot doesn't have access to all the data. It only has access to the data that the API returns during that query. It does not augment Copilot. It does not bring data inside Copilot. It just uses the retrieval augmented generation mechanism to bring that into the context of the query, does the query, returns the data, show it, and then forgets about it. But Copilot did the right thing. This is a very, very, very powerful scenario, for example, especially for invoices, for example. Invoices are changing every day, every hour, every minute. You don't want to rely on an index and then you get data that is out of date.
Outdated.
So you want to make sure you have that. So that is kind of the second way. So it's messaging extensions. It's available as plugins in Copilot. So you enable plugins, and then you can talk with plugins, very similar to how OpenAI and ChatGPT have been doing it in the past. The third way is for the very, very, very experience. I wouldn't say experience that because that's not the case. But people that want to control the entire experience from A to Z, and it's basically to build your own Copilot. To build a custom Copilot, so there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can go to Azure AI Studio. You can go with the Teams AI library. You can build your own. You can bring your own models. You want to use OpenAI, bring OpenAI. You want to use the Llama 2, or you want to use any other type of generative AI model. You're up to the races. But the thing that makes it really powerful is the fact that inside these copilots, even though right now they're not integrated that much in the copilot experience, you see them as a bot, as another experience in the left rail in Teams. You can have a very similar experience to what Copilot provides, and you can also call back into Microsoft 365. Thanks to Microsoft Graph, you can, if you want to do, instead of doing, you do it basically the other way around. Instead of having access to all the Microsoft 365 data plus your plugins, now you have access to whatever you're building. And then on demand, you can go back to Microsoft 365, retrieve top 10 documents that matches some of the queries from the user and apply that. So I really see that there's the low-code version of it. There is the graph connector and messaging extension, which are already inside the ecosystem. And outside of the ecosystem is what I would do is custom Copilot with Teams AI library, and so on and so forth.
Cool. So quite a few options there.
Yeah.
So what I'm wondering is, how different is it from a if I take my developer hat on, how different is developing against Copilot from developing against Teams or SharePoint, or is it the same? Because you mentioned Teams message extensions. Does that mean I can reuse them, or do I need to build them from the ground up? Or what's your take on that? What's different and what's not?
I think that's a very good question. I think I would say a vast majority of the skills and the tools that you have been using to build these experiences will be exactly the same. So you're still going to use the Teams toolkit to build your messaging extension. You're still going to be able to use them to deploy and sideload or install it for yourself and test your app. Where there will be a little bit of a difference is in how you're going to present the available capabilities to Copilot. The way you register it, exactly the same. But now you need to realize that you're not talking to a human anymore. When you put a description of a function, or the description of a capability, you cannot just say list of invoices, because that Copilot, when it's going to read that, list of invoices. Okay, how do I filter that? How do I do this? How do I, and keep in mind that all the code that goes to your API, to your messaging extension, is actually happening in real time and is generated in real time. So it kind of figures out your API. It says, oh, you're asking for a top 10. So I need to find like a kind of top parameter that I need to be able to specify it. So you need to be extremely clear, extremely descriptive in what you're building, but you cannot do like you need to keep it in a way that Copilot understands it and the user understands it. There are ways sometimes to have a description for you. What do you call description for human, description for model? I love this for human. Yeah, we're all human. But it's really important that the way I'm a dev. I'm very lazy sometimes on my descriptions because it's just a one-liner. Now, this is what drives the entire experience, and also this is what drives the selection of plugins. If you don't have a good description, how can Copilot know that it needs to call your API? How can Copilot know that your messaging extension is the right one to call in that context? Everything is dynamic. Everything is auto-generated. Everything is very, it's kind of a roll of die, right? Like I help put guardrails around Copilot, and that's where I think um, people love to call to call it like engineering, prompt engineering. It's kind of that we really need to be able to describe things in a way that LLMs and copilots and AI can understand us, and that's really where the big difference is. Um, and something different also. Well, you need a Copilot license to be able to test it in the full Copilot scenario. You're going to need a license. Now, everybody can get a license. A single license is enough to actually start your thing, so you should be good with that. But it definitely, to be able to code on Copilot today, you're going to need a license.
Okay, gotcha. So from a developer experience, what's your take on the current status? So are there major gaps still open which need to be closed, or um, do you think that there are some minor tweaks left which first of all you guys need to tackle to make the development experience even better? Or what's your take on the future of that?
We have really bold goals around the developer experience for Copilot for Microsoft 365. We really, really want to improve that capability to bring more ease of use into the game. We want to make sure it's easier. One of the main complaints, or yeah, complaints we get from devs is we have it, it's great. When I talk to Copilot without plugins, I get data. It actually really helps me with my productivity. It also does the same thing when I'm using plugins and custom solutions I bring to Copilot, either through connectors or plugins, or even with Copilot Studio. But what is really hard is sometimes in an environment, you're going to have a couple of plugins that semantically could be used for the query you have. So sometimes you have a customer database and an invoice database. Those are two plugins. And then you ask, give me the customers that paid the most. And then Copilot needs to understand, okay, which one do I call, or which ones do I call, to then gather data and play along with it. Um, so the thing that we hear the most is we need a better debugging experience to help us understand why my plugin was not selected, or why my plugin called into my API in a really weird way. Like that's not how my API works. Why would you call it in that way? So that is one of the things that our team is really, really, really working on. Um, the one thing that we're hearing also a lot is, in that at the core of developer experience, docs, samples, examples, decision tree. What do you build and when? Um, and that is something that we're hearing a lot about. And then there's tons more things that we're working on. Stay tuned for our build event in May, where we're going to announce a bunch of different things that we're doing there. But we're really there to improve the developer experience. Um, and the one thing that we want to like really knock off, like making sure that we have an amazing experience, is with the debugging in docs, where I think this is where there's a lot to gain today. There's already the Copilot Dev Center, which is actually pretty great, but I think we want to improve it with a ton more. Keep in mind, like, we're Copilot, as a new kid in town, is competing against tens of years of ecosystem. The ecosystem has been there for all, and now even the same way Teams was like 6 or 7 years ago, where it started from scratch. Uh, Now we're competing against Teams, and bring people into Copilot, and that's why we're reusing a lot of the constructs of Teams, because it has been successful. We want to make sure that we make it as successful as possible for Copilot devs.
Cool, awesome. And so, as we run out of time here, one last question, which are basically two questions in one, because you mentioned you're using Word quite extensively. So I'm assuming you're using Copilot overall as well. So first, what are your most commonly used prompts or use cases with Copilot? And what are you personally still missing when using Copilot?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I would say here's the thing. I think the most useful prompts for me, especially in a very fast-paced environment like we are right now in the Copilot team, everything goes so quick that you cannot be in every room at every moment. So for me, just using not even straight into Copilot, but using the meeting recap capabilities that exist in Teams has been a life-changing thing. Now I can actually um, I used to be to watch a majority of the recordings in like 1.8x just to go through the meetings. Now I can actually go into the recap, read it, and if I need to dive into it, then I'm going to go and do a 1.8. So I'm saving a lot of time. All the docs that are there have been shared, and there are tons of docs that are shared in every meeting. So that is really, really useful for me. And the other thing is around there's so many things that are shared and there are so many chats all over the place and so many meetings all over the place that just asking Copilot, I remember there was a doc that was talking about this. Can you help me find it? I don't know the name. I don't know who wrote it, but I know it talked about the very critical thing that I need to look into it. Those are the things that are the most. So right now, I would say it recap and discoverability of things. Um, those are two prompts that are my preferred ways of using it. Uh, what I miss the most, what I wish, uh, I would want Copilot to understand my behavior. A good example, I've been out of the office for the last 3 days. My son was sick. I would love Copilot to give me a heads up on, by the way, we haven't seen you clicking around in the last 3 days. So definitely you were out of office. You missed this. These critical decisions were made. These are the people you should probably need to go and talk to, and give me a nice summary of that. So that way I can spend today instead of digging.
Yeah,
It would be super
more
proactive.
proactively. Yeah,
Exactly, and that's and now I say that in a way where um, it's more a recap and I'm out of office and I come back, but I think you can do that on a daily basis on stuff to make sure that you don't have a blind side, which is always a critical thing as a PM. You want to have as little blind sides as possible, so that way you are always on top of your game, and you also get the most out of the organization. You're kind of aware, not necessarily aware of everything, but you're aware of everything you care about. And that to me, that's to remove the blind side effect, and I wouldn't be there. So definitely more proactiveness from Copilot would be an amazing thing.
that's actually a great wish, and that was also one of my favorite picks because I was used to have a bot at Solvion proactively notifying us about, let's say, news and stuff like that. So I think Copilot has still a lot of potential in that space. So
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.